So, hello everyone. This is part of a new series of interviews with South Asian women. I thought it would be great to hear about different career paths, just to highlight a particular issue as well and see where we can provide some information and support to people within our community. And today I've got with me Dr. Sara Ramzan. She's a pharmacist and doctor by PhD, specialising in helping South Asian women make lasting habit changes and take micro steps towards diabetes remission. So, really worthwhile mission there. So, hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me
Well,
today.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited because it's a new thing we're trying out, and I think I support South Asian women, and in your business you have that focus as well.
Mhm.
So it'd be wonderful to hear from you. I want to start off just by hearing how you got to this point in your career, because I know it wasn't a straightforward step. So yeah, if you could
Yeah.
start off with that, that'd be great.
So I'm a qualified pharmacist from University of Copenhagen, and then I moved to the UK and got registered as a pharmacist. And then I was sort of trying to, because obviously the way you work as a pharmacist in Denmark is very different from how you work as a pharmacist here. So I sort of had to find my feet with that. And I was also very keen to get a scholarship for a PhD. So I literally spent like a year and a half trying to find my feet, figure things out, interviewing for different PhD scholarships, as well as doing locum work. And probably a very dark time, just because, when you're trying to figure things out, um, and you don't really know where it's going, and you moved country as well. So there was like so many things, but I think for me, the good thing was I knew what I wanted, but I just didn't know how to get there. And I kept trying. So I had three different interviews for scholarship, PhD scholarships before I actually got a scholarship. Um, yeah, so that's how I got to that PhD. And after my PhD, then I got into a clinical role where well, it happened. It was a bit of a coincidence because I took the role and I was supposed to be like everybody else, treating all sorts of conditions, being a pharmacist. But because I came from a diabetes background, they asked me, "Do you want to try doing the diabetes first?" And I said, "Yeah, why not?" And yeah, then I fell into more and more clinics for South Asians because I speak Urdu and I was connecting well, and there was good feedback on my clinics. And then I just started growing and learning, and obviously I could see this gap around healthcare, how we talk about healthcare from the research I had done in the past. Yeah, I probably didn't mention that during my bachelor's, I took a break as well, where I took a year out where I did research.
Wow.
And alongside my PhD, I had various research positions as well. So I had like a good understanding of how South Asians perceive the health and the self-beliefs around, yeah, health as well, and themselves, identity and themselves, both from research, but also being a South Asian myself and having like a lived experience. Yeah, so for me, that's just been like a gradual thing. And then it came to a point for me where I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And I didn't, that is when you have high blood sugars in pregnancy. And I didn't feel that I was supported to make non-medical decisions for myself, treatment pathways.
What
And
do
I
you
started, yeah.
what do you mean by the non-medical?
So that is like, what can I do in terms of my diet? What can I do in terms of movement? What can I do in terms of like sleeping patterns? Does that affect? So it was all of these things that are like non-medical. Nobody asked me about them, and I had a quite difficult pregnancy, but I didn't feel like anybody asked how is that impacting this, or anybody telling me that this could impact my blood sugars. And I had obviously with my background, I had some knowledge about it, but not that extensive because I've never treated that side of things before. Um, so for me, that started that learning journey. Okay, how do I support myself? And once I knew that, I started learning during my mat leave. I started retraining, like how do I support people with type 2 diabetes in habit changes, in the diet, all them kind of things. And I think without realizing, it's put a really nice bow to all the experience I've had from the last 9, 10 years.
Wow.
Um, and I think it's like when you always think about things, you're always like, oh, I don't know where I'm going with this. And I have an idea in my head, and all of a sudden it just falls into place. And I feel like at the minute, that's where I'm in my life. I probably don't know where, because obviously it's fairly new that I started doing this work, and I don't know which direction that's gonna go in.
Mm.
Or in terms of my skill set, um, I feel like it's like it's put a really nice bow to what I know and how I can actually utilize all the skills I've acquired over the years.
I mean, it sounds to me that obviously you've got the pharmacy experience, you've got the PhD experience, but you're also using your lived experience and your cultural experience to help
Yeah.
now support other women when they're going through this. And you haven't, and you've done a lot of research behind it too. So it's not come from anywhere. Like you said, you've gone through all the steps to get to where you are. But where you said you've had those periods of uncertainty where you're not quite sure where it's heading to or what the next step's going to be, what would you say has helped you out of that?
Yeah. I think one thing is having that ability to just sit down and reflect on what is it that is worrying me. And also having a good support system that you can talk to about these things. So that's like both professionally, but also in your day-to-day life. So that's like family and friends. And also just, try. What I've always done is if I'm interested in a role, if I wanted to do something, I will try and reach out to people who are actually doing what I want to do and
Mhm.
ask them, how did you get there?
Mhm.
And I have never been, even like now, I have people who see that I'm a Danish pharmacist and they reach out to me and say, Sarah, how did you get registered? I'm struggling with this. Could you please help? And I literally, at least once a month or once every 2 months, speak to a new person that I don't know, but wanting to know information about how do you, as a Danish pharmacist, move here and get registered? Because, as I said, the system is very, very different than what we have back home. Um, so I think the main thing is really like figure out what is it that worries you and then find support for that in the way that you're needing support.
Yeah, and that's brilliant advice, I think. I'd probably agree when I've been in periods of change and uncertainty. I think reaching out to people is one of the best things you can do, even if it feels a bit frightening or a little bit uncertain. I find that most of the time when you ask people, they're more than willing to help.
Yeah.
That's great. So you've spoken a little bit about the work in diabetes, and you went through that gestational diabetes, so diabetes in pregnancy, and I'm sure there's a lot of information out there for that. But you also spoke about making changes to lifestyle and food. I
Mhm.
find within South Asian culture, I don't know if you agree, but sometimes there's a stigma about making changes and changing diets. What's your approach to that?
I think one of the conversations I have with people and when I do talks and stuff as well, I always say it's about reframing how we put things out there. So, if when people say, something very ab diet bill, for instance, or or these kind of questions, reframing and saying, you know what, I'm actually trying to look after my health.
Yeah.
And reframing what you hear. And I always say, if you know that you're going to meet somebody who's going to tell you a certain thing or you're going to have a certain conversation and it's going to hurt your feelings, have a response ready or have that filter ready. Do you get what I mean? Like you might have to go home and process, like you might not be at the stage where you can give them a reframed answer to what they said, but also you need to emotionally protect yourself. So that means you can put on that filter, go home, but not emotionally eat over it, but instead, reframe. Why did they say this? Does this say something about me? Does that say something about them?
Mm.
And if it does, what does it say about me? What does it say about them? And how much of that is actually, fact check? How much of that, whatever has been said, is true? You know? Sorry, just have to put my charger on. Didn't come as well prepared as I thought.
It happens. It's life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's definitely true. It's having, I find in South Asian culture sometimes, and women are probably the worst for it. There'll be no filter. I find older generations, especially, they will just say what they want. Oh, you've put on a bit of weight. Oh, should you be eating that?
Yeah.
And you suddenly become really self-conscious about it. So I think the things that you said about reframing what's true, what's not true, can be so helpful, especially if you can do it before you go into that situation. But if you haven't, then thinking about it after, not beating yourself up and
Mm.
just thinking about it more objectively.
Mm. And I
Health.
think one of the things that you mentioned just right now around, oh, you put on some weight, if that does hurt your feelings, just have a reflection on, okay, why does it actually hurt my feelings? Is there some truth to it? Probably, yeah, because I imagine being at that healthy weight that I used to be, but there's so many other things going on right now that I cannot look after my health in the same way. Okay, what is a small thing I could do right here, right now, to get towards that health? And a lot of people don't realize they don't have to do massive big things. It's like the small things that absorb towards their health. And it's coming to that realization that, if we identify, it's like, when we have a task at work, we have a deadline for it and we work hard towards it. So if we don't have health as our goal, and we won't be prioritizing it, and we will always be putting it off.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm a big advocate for health and exercise, mm, for for how it makes you feel.
Mm.
So I always put in place, I do regular exercise, and for me, getting it outside, even if it's just a walk, a 20-minute walk, I do it because it makes me feel good. And the side effect is that it helps my body, but the benefits to your brain and everything, it goes with it. And that's the approach I take. But it took a long while to get here because I think when we were younger, it's all about body image. It's all about how we look and exercising to lose weight. And again, when you spoke about reframing, it's reframing that to say, actually, like you said earlier, I'm doing this to take care of myself.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and that's a big thing.
It's so interesting you say this about walks because I have a child in year one, and when she first started school, I absolutely hated doing the school runs because it was just like, a certain time we had to be there, and I was used to it was nursery, so you finish work and you go there when you're ready. Like you go at a certain time, but you go when you're ready, so it could be plus minus some time. And now with school, you just had to be there certain way, a certain time. And now I have this habit of our youngest one. She naps at that time. So we actually go for a walk the hour before the school run. So it's like a time that I look forward to now. But it's that reframing of, oh, I don't want to do the school run to now. Okay, you know what? I actually do want to do the school runs because I get to get some fresh air and I get to clear my mind. And the little one is gets to nap because I know she will fall asleep. So
Exactly, finding the benefit in what you're doing.
yeah.
Definitely. So what are the other ways that you can help with reframing habits? Because I imagine if you're at the stage where you're pre-diabetes or diabetes, like type 2 diabetes, those habits have formed probably for a really long time. And then to suddenly make changes, I imagine it can feel really daunting. So if you had a client just now and they said, I need to make some changes, what
Yeah.
are some ways that you would recommend to them?
Yeah, so we always start off with I give them a lot of knowledge around food and nutrition and their condition as well. So you know how we have some beliefs around, oh, you know what, you shouldn't be eating cheese or you shouldn't be eating white rice. You shouldn't be eating certain things. I try to have them bring all of those things forward and then re-educate themselves on, okay, what's actually in cheese? What are the components in rice? And if I want to swap from white rice to brown rice, what is my purpose with that? Or actually, and do I like the brown rice that I'm trying to eat? Because one of the things I always say is that, the reason people don't succeed with the changes they're trying to make is really much because they're trying to create a lifestyle that isn't making their life better, it's making it worse. And that just means something like, if you don't like brown rice and you force yourself to eat the brown rice, you won't be able to sustain this habit over a longer period of time. So could we do something else with that? Yeah, maybe we could cut down on, the amount of rice that we have. We could add some fiber, we could add some vegetables, we could add some protein. So it's that reframing of, okay, if that solution does not work for me because it doesn't make me happier, like what can I do then? And it's that reframing I have a lot of conversations around when it comes to food, for instance. So I'm not very black and white and say, oh, you should be eating this or you shouldn't be eating that. When people say, oh, should I be eating cheese? I ask them, what is your worry about cheese?
Mm.
What is your concern? And then we start from there. I had somebody yesterday who literally said this around cheese. She said, "Oh, I've always been told that cheese is not good for you and it's high in fats." And I said, "But the cheese that you like, have you ever read the labels?" And she said, "I don't know how to read a label."
Oh, right.
you know? And she said, I don't know how to read a label. And there's like, okay, you know what? There's some education here around how do I actually read that label, what's in my food.
Yeah.
Because there are, I promise you, there are other things than fat in a cheese, and it's the same thing goes with chocolate. People are like, oh, it's so high in sugar, but actually, if you turn it around, you will see that it has different macronutrients in it.
Mm.
Um, so having that conversation, and then we move on to, so that's like one side of things. I also give like list of things where it's like shown to them these foods have low blood sugar responses, high blood sugar responses, and then obviously you can trial and see what works for you, what doesn't work for you, but we don't have to be that black and white. And
Yeah.
again, that's why I focus a lot more around the behaviors and why we have them rather than saying don't eat this or don't eat that, or give priority to certain things, because it screws our relationship to food.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we move on to then is like very structured, is like what are my self beliefs around, like some people like, you know what, I've always been a fat or big person. Um, and how do we reframe that? Where does that story in our head come from?
Mm.
And working with that, then there are other things like, how do you, how you ask, like, how do you have that conversation when somebody says to you, oh, you put on some weight? And we work with these emotional side of things that, when these things crops up, how are we going to deal with it? And also, okay, how do we actually build sustainable habits? And actually, there are steps that you need to take. So for instance, if you want to start, let's say, I'll have a cup of, I have my water tumbler here. So if you want to be drinking water every day, um you won't be drinking it if you don't have a tumbler or a glass or something that can remind you, or something that is big enough. So you sort of need to prepare, okay, what am I preparing steps? You know what? I would need a water bottle, for instance, you need
Yeah.
to go and buy that water bottle. Okay, so once you have that water bottle, what is the next step for you? Well, I need to be reminded in the beginning because this is not a habit of mine. Okay, but I do have a cup of coffee every day. So that's like what we call habit stacking. So established habit where we link a new habit. So you know what? I'm going to fill up that water bottle when I have my morning coffee, for instance. All right, later on in the day, 3 o'clock, I have a coffee break. I could refill my water bottle by that time as well. If it depends on how much, what is your goal for your water intake. But it's like small things where we can link existing habits to new habits and develop. So but we need to put these things in place. There
Mm.
might be other things where you actually need to put it down in your diary, such as if you need to go for a workout, okay, what do I need to do? I need to pack my bags. I need to make sure that, I put it in my diary so I don't put it off. So it's like all of these planning steps.
Mm.
We work on, okay, how do you get there and why is that a good plan, a realistic plan?
Mm.
Because quite a lot of people they say, "Oh, I can do this, 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 this." And you know what? At the end of the day, I will do this, and there's like 7 o'clock, and I'm like, "Is that realistic for you?" For some people, it might be realistic because they really, really want to achieve this goal. For other people, it might be a time where they postpone it, and then we need to rethink. Okay, do you actually need to be going to the gym to do this workout? Could you do it at the other times of the day, or could you reduce the amount of times you go in a week? This again, these habits, behaviors reflect on why do we want to do the things that we do, and could be
Brilliant.
start even smaller than that if that is not a realistic goal.
Yeah, it comes back to, I mean, I think your take on it is really refreshing because I feel like if you go to the doctors or you go to another professional with and say, you know, I've got this issue, what do I need? It's so likely that they'll give you medication or they'll give you leaflets and information, but it's not tailored to your lifestyle. And everything you just said is having conversations with a person, finding out how they live their life, what's going to be good for them, what's going to be sustainable for them, which I think is the key to this. Because I think with this type of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, you've got to make fundamental lifestyle changes. And if it's a quick fix that's not going to work, they're not going to keep it up for a long time. Whereas the things you're saying are about values and beliefs. So they're held very deeply in our psyche, and it takes a little bit of unraveling. It takes, a person to open up and talk about their beliefs, to be really comfortable with you, to let that out. And it's worth it to make the changes and to make those sustainable changes.
Mm.
For me as a coach, everything you said makes sense because it aligns so well with coaching and in finding those goals, those big motivating goals, and then helping you through that and making them as real actionable tasks that you can do every day. And I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of the habit stacking as well. I think if you link it into things that you're already doing in your day, it makes it so much easier. It takes out some of that decision making that, oh, I'm making my cup of tea, I'll fill up my water bottle at the same time and I'll have this with me and carry it
Mhm.
around. Like it works. It works. I know
And you know what?
it
Quite
works.
often, when you say to somebody, "Okay, when are you going to do it?" They will tell you an existing habit. And then you introduce the word to them, and then it comes to the forefront of their head, and they start using it. After a couple of sessions, they actually start using it themselves. I
Exactly.
could do some habits stacking. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. It's sunk in, you know that they've got it. Oh, definitely. So we've spoken a little bit about habits, making changes, a little bit more of that cultural context
Mhm.
that we face. And I think, also with South Asian food, and we're known for our real sweet treats.
Yeah.
And that's probably why some of the time I think we get that high diabetes rates is because we love our jalebi, gulab jamun, things like that. They're always around, especially when you go to family functions.
Mhm.
And that's probably the hardest time for me as well, is that when you're with lots of people and there's lots of food available, would you have any tips for, when you're in that situation and you're surrounded by family and food and everyone's eating, but actually you've got that in your mind that you've got a health condition and you're working to try and control it. What would you say to someone in that situation?
I think one thing that obviously comes up if somebody is offering to say, "Oh, try this," and you actually, if you don't feel like try, if you filled your plate, for instance, like having that reframe instead of saying, "Okay, I'll take it," you could, for instance, say, "You know what? Um, I had my eyes on this thing that you're actually wanting, so you're actually giving a polite response to what they said, but you diverted the situation towards some other food." But it's also like if you have a full plate, you can say, my plate is full right now, and I will come back to it. And then that person hopefully will not be checking in on whether you're coming back to it or not. Do you know what I mean? And then there's also this thing like what I, for instance, have started doing now. If there's a big buffet there, I might ask other people who already picked from the food what's good.
Okay.
And you know what I mean? Rather than you just like filled your plate and you realize, oh, you know what, this is a bit
Don't
bland.
want
I don't want this and nobody like this. So somebody whose taste buds I trust, I would ask them like what's good. And I will take those things. And also the mindset of like you can take small bits of everything. When you are at a buffet rather than taking whole bits. And if there's a whole samosa, nobody says you have to take a whole samosa. You could ask somebody, do you want to share that? Break it in two, break it in four, use a knife. Do you know what I mean? Thinking of those alternatives, you could bring in a knife and cut it and leave it for somebody else to take the other half who might be thinking, oh, you know what? I'm good with half a samosa. So it's like again that reframing of okay, Asian foods are not bad. It's about the moderation, it's about the quantity. And I'll also say that thing around tapping into your hunger and fullness cue. So let's say if you do have celebration coming up. Some people they starve themselves all day because they've been busy preparations and everything, and they get there and they have no control whatsoever on their fullness because they're so hungry. So I always say try to keep your regular pattern throughout the day. So when you get to that celebration, you are much more in control, especially if you tapped into your hunger and fullness because you would know I'm full now. And then the other thing is like when you are at celebrations, okay, how do I start nibbling? And this is also at home. How do I start nibbling on the food if I am full? One thing I say is like mostly people have a napkin with them. Put a napkin and cover the food. So when you are chatting away, you're not sitting there and nibbling on the leftovers after you stop eating. So it's just that like make that an unconscious habit, just like cover the food because if you don't see it, you won't be nibbling on it. And if you do need something to nibble on or whatever, maybe just have a glass of water next to you,
Yeah.
and then drink from that glass of water if you need something to pick up every now and then. So again, it's that reframing of if I have one habit, if I want to stop it, it's not only about stopping, it's like how do I replace that habit with something else that is more uh, better for me or more intentional for me?
Yeah, definitely. Sarah, they're really good tips. I think I'm definitely gonna take that one away for my next wedding. So I always, like I said, when you've got kids and you're busy all day getting them ready, planning, and then you get there and you're just like, oh, I haven't eaten, so I'll just eat as much as I want right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it
And I
gets
think again that comes down to planning and habits, isn't it? You know how I said, look, if you know you're going for that event and you're going to be busy all day, okay, could I have some food in the fridge that just needs heating up, for instance, you know? Could I have some easy meals ready, so I don't have to overthink it in the moment. I'm just heating up and eating, and that takes me 10, maximum 15 minutes,
yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I feel like we've covered so much already, and I'm sure it's going to help lots of women out there listening to your advice and your tips. Just as we wrap up, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
So I have my website, Type 2 Diabetes Doctor, and I'm also on Instagram. And then I do run a master class every 2-ish months. The last one ran a couple of days ago, and the next one is due end of April. So they can find that on Eventbrite as well.
Okay.
If they are interested in like having a sneak peek into what is it like working with me without committing to too much, we cover a lot of things, especially around, what are your beliefs around your health and where do you want to get with things. They get like a good sneak peek into my world there.
Brilliant. And I will, alongside this video, put down all the links to your website and your Instagram as well. But thank you so much for joining today.
Yes, I am on LinkedIn as well.
Oh, LinkedIn, yeah, and
Yes,
Instagram.
it's a
I know
important one.
I found you on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I thought
Yes.
we've got to have this conversation. But thank you so much for sharing everything that you have today. I know it
Thanks
will
for
be
having
really
me.
useful. Okay, take care.